When last we saw Luca and Chrono Cross, Lynx and Harl had abducted her from the orphanage to make her unlock the Promethean Circuit's lock on the frozen flame. Everyone said she died, but it's never confirmed. The only thing we got was the whole thing ended in failure. So what if he threw her in a prison instead? It was like, okay, you don't want to work on unlocking the lock on the frozen flame, you don't want to help me, you're just going to go to jail until you change your mind. So he imprisons her in Chronopolis somewhere, like maybe on one of these little satellite islands or something, and he's like, you can sit there and you can think about it until you decide if you ever want your freedom back, then you can just help me get the frozen flame. And Luca's like, okay, well, maybe if you want me to help you get the frozen flame, maybe you should give me the old parts of Robo that are still left, because I can study him better. Because remember, Robo became part of the Prometheus Circuit. He's basically the Prometheus Circuit, but it's not totally explained how that happened. There could be parts of him still kicking around. Maybe Balthazar integrated the core of Robo, or just some parts of Robo. The essence of Robo is a robot, so he could have existed as programming in the Prometheus Circuit. Parts of him could have been the Prometheus Circuit, but yeah, in this scenario, Robo's essence and most of his parts were integrated into Fate as the Promethean Circuit, but he also existed in the form of his discarded shell, seen here. Robo's head, at least, as we see here, is still around, and Luca has got some kind of function going from it. Okay, now on to the world at large. Chrono Cross ends when Surge unifies the dimensions and saves Shala from the Time Devourer, but no reason is given to us to expect that there would be a universal whitewash with a generic happy ending that resulted from these actions. The socio-political state of the world would be largely the same following the game, as the entire plot was the machinations of Balthazar to free Shala and stop the Time Devourer. That's great. We're all glad that Time Devourer will not destroy space-time continuum. However, there's some things that would not have just been fixed. In both the home world and another world of Chrono Cross, Por was still a dominant military force that was just basically pushing everyone around. We saw in Chrono Cross that Por sort of pushed into El Nido a little bit. They took over Termina and Viper Manor, but General Viper often suspected Por would one day launch a massive invasion of El Nido in search of the frozen flame. And so let's imagine after Chrono Cross, that's exactly what happened. I take you to the moments directly following Chrono Cross. Following Surge's battle with the Dragon God, the Dragoons are investigating Chronopolis, where they find Luca alive. They release her and she flees with them to their home base in Viper Manor, bringing the crippled Robo with her. By this time, Por has learned of the unique events occurring in El Nido and begun a full-scale invasion. Under General Viper's command, the Acacia Dragoons are resisting to save El Nido from being overrun, but in fact are being overwhelmed. The Porian forces are too vast. At the manor, they are making their final stand against the forces of Por, while at the same time Por is claiming the frozen flame from its position atop Terra Tower. In Viper Manor, Luca finds Balthazar's lab, from which he departed for the future in the Neo-Epoch. There, Luca meets Beach Bum, Anu, which imparts shocking news to her. How would he impart shocking news? Well, in the future with only Anu, Balthazar has managed to understand finally a rudimentary basis of their native language. Being able to communicate with the Anu, he's confirmed that they do in fact see time as a singularity, and Balthazar calls them temporally entangled. Balthazar realizes that if you can get the Anu to communicate to each other, they can actually communicate through time. So that's how he's talking to her from the future through the new Beach Bum. He says everything was for nothing. He played God out of necessity to save Shala and stop the Time Devourer, but the future refused to change. Catastrophe has still befallen them, and the future is worse than before. The Earth has still been destroyed, presumably by Lavos, and humanity remains mostly extinct. Those who have survived are not the starving people in the domes we once knew, but a highly militarized coalition of despots, the remnants of the Porian Empire. Even more disturbing, his communications throughout time with the New are going dark. He suspects someone is eliminating them, and he's startled by their ability to do so in such a coordinated effort across time. Balthazar does not know how this happened and imparts his regret. He reports the Neo-Epic has been damaged beyond repair, and although he's trapped in the future, he's instructed a beach bum to build a time egg there in the lab with materials at the manor. Balthazar says, Labos is an unknowable evil that must be stopped at its very origin on planet Earth. Although it's against his better judgment to continue to try and change the flow of time, he cannot sit idly by and watch the world become what he sees before him. Meanwhile, in 1020 AD, Luca's time is running out as well. Porian forces are breaking down the doors to the manor, and Beach Bum gives Luca the time egg, saying it will take her to the root of all the trouble. Viper implores Luca to go. She cracks the time egg and disappears. Okay, I'll set the stage. In the sky, there was a red star about to fall. So this is shortly before Labos fell and hit the Earth in the first place. The Ioka and Laruba tribes are engaged in a war with the Reptites. However, this time, both sides are employing futuristic weaponry. Luca seeks help from the humans, but the first thing she finds right away is that the humans are way different. Ayla and Kino are nowhere in sight, but the new leaders, Migo and Gigi, which are names that were originally going to be used in Chrono Trigger, but then thrown out. So Migo and Gigi are like, who are you? When they find Luca, and she's kind of like, I'm a human. I guess we're both humans. We should help each other. And they're like, no. Migo and Gigi are hostile to all humans not born of the dragon. They've sworn allegiance to the divine dragon, and if you're not with us, you're the enemy. So they attack. And so Luca runs, and she's escaping the humans, and then they get into a fight with the Reptites, who then show up. And yeah, they've got the guns too. Luca's just like, what is going on? How can these cavemen and the Reptites be using super lasers to fight each other, laser guns? And then she gets captured by the Reptites. They take her to the Reptite lair. Azala comes down, being all creepy, and is like, you're a strange looking human. Luca knows her time is running out. The red star is going to fall. Lavos is going to hit the earth. Everyone's going to die. And she's got to tell Azala that. She's like, yo, your whole race of Reptites is about to be eliminated unless we get out of here. Labos is going to fall and we're all going to die. But Azala is not buying it. So Luca has to convince her, and she says, okay, look at this, and shows her the fire magic, which none of the other cave people can use magic. So after a while, she basically convinces Azala that it can't hurt if the Reptites just kind of move out of Chrono lair for a while this weird thing falls out of the sky, which it does. This time, the Reptites avoid extinction when Labos falls. So Luca and Azala and everyone, all the Reptites, just watch as Labos falls out of the sky and hits the Chrono lair just like before, and kicks up all this dust and creates a huge calamity that Luca is just witnessing in abject horror. She then makes her move to save the future no matter what the cost. You gotta keep in mind, at this time, Luca has been a long, troubled, and tormented soul, having seen her mother crippled, having fought to save the future only to wonder how many lives they sacrificed from other timelines. She then found happiness in the orphanage only to see Poor kill Marl and Crono, and for Lynx to burn the orphanage to the ground and enslave her in Chronopolis. And then Balthazar told her it was all for nothing. In this head state, Luca is ready to orchestrate a final plan to do as Balthazar said, and wipe out the source of all the trouble at its earliest time, no matter the cost. Luca puts on her hat. It's game face time. She's gonna do what she came here to do. After the dust settles from Labos colliding, she's like, yo, Azala, let's go kill that thing. So they go in there. All the Reptites and Azala launch a massive attack on Labos at its basically earliest form. It just landed on Earth. It just hasn't burrowed down yet. They have some futuristic weaponry, don't forget too. They have some future guns. And they kill Labos. Imagine the big, familiar form of the Labos shell smoldering, In front of it, reptites carry away the still body of the Labos core, bloodied and obviously dead. Azala rallies the reptites to a cheer of victory while holding aloft one of the Labos bits. And then Luca is looking on. Luca's kind of aged now. She's kind of a little bit older. And she also looks, she's looking on too, and she looks troubled. And she's holding one of the Labos bits too. Boom. So that starts this whole new timeline where Labos got defeated super early on. One of the themes for Chrono Trigger 2, as speculated by Masato Kato, was leaving the past behind. We're branching into totally new territory, of course inspired by the old territory, but basically Luca just reset the timeline from the original Chrono Trigger and the one that Chrono Cross happened on. In the time before time, the assassination of the Reptite Queen sparked a Reptite civil war. A faction of Reptites loyal to the Queen blamed a human for her death and wanted to carry out her plan to eliminate all of them. However, thanks to the Human Resettlement Project, a more influential group of Reptites had learned to coexist with the humans and see them as friends. These Reptites fought for the humans' right to live. Of course, the humans fought on this side as well, and the survival of humanity was secured. For a short time there was peace. However, a new conflict soon arose. As stated in Chrono Cross, the Dragonians from the original Reptite timeline abhorred humanity because they viewed humans as corrupted by Labos's influence. Now, some of them were to suffer the same fate. For you see, on this timeline, the frozen flame remained in possession of Azala's descendants. As it had done with the humans before, it would eventually alter their genome and grant them the use of magic. However, this was still millions of years away. Meanwhile, the high-tech weaponry and other advanced technologies brought to prehistory by Dalton before the death of Labos, combined with the technical know-how Luca had imparted to the Reptite sages, served as an organic springboard to advance both human and Reptite understanding of inorganic technologies. Eventually, a highly knowledgeable faction of technology-using sages came to power, calling themselves the Enlightened Ones. This group viewed the frozen flame as dangerous because of its connection to Labos. They legitimately saw the flame as an extraterrestrial threat and sought to destroy it. When those who possessed the flame rallied to protect it, the Enlightened Ones sought violence to contain them. Reptite and human alike fell out on both sides of this conflict. Thus began a long battle for power between a small group of ultra-powerful technocrats and the rest of the population. No matter how close the Enlightened Ones came to destroying the frozen flame, the Earthbound were always able to win the day through sheer numbers. Eventually, the flame was hidden away in a place undetectable by Cerulean technology. Thus, the stage was set for the peoples of the world to become locked in perpetual conflict of escalating barbarity. However, it would take a very long time for the flame to augment the people of the planet with magical abilities, and so those who utilized the anachronistic technologies developed an advantage early on. As the Enlightened Ones saw their environment being destroyed by never-ending war, they set about trying to rise above it. They harnessed their understanding of gravity and leveraged the power of the Sunstone, raising several huge landmasses into the clouds. And so, there was once again a kingdom in the sky, though hardly as peaceful as the Zeal we once knew. From their lofty position, the Zealians systematically enslaved and oppressed the Earthbound, raining down destruction whenever the threat rose too high. Having no immediate recourse, the Earthbound became a slave caste. And so the First Great War ended with the Enlightened Ones of Zeal as the victor. For aeons, the Earthbound lived in poverty below this wealthy ruling class of technocrats. However, time inevitably eroded the memory of the Zealians. As generations passed, they forgot the reasons why society had been structured this way. They grew forgetful and complacent, content to use the Earthbound as a slave caste as they saw fit. Their zealous desire to destroy the frozen flame was lost to the ages, and war perpetuated itself simply because no one could remember who cast the first stone. Given enough time, the Dragonian and human races mixed. On the surface, the arrival of the new race was celebrated. The Earthbound viewed the demi-humans as the next great leap forward. However, the technocrats of the skies carried in them a long tradition of xenophobia from the times of Dalton. Demi-humans born in Zeal were considered impure. They and their parents were exiled to live as slaves among the Earthbound. However, this culture was unfit for life on the surface, and likewise hated by the Earthbound for their complacence and Zeal's brutal domination of the surface. With no place to call their home, this group of exiled demi-humans used crude technologies to lift their own continent into the sky, the land we know as Mount Woe. And so the people that symbolized so much hope for the planet were cruelly locked away in a prison of their own design, halfway between the Sky Kingdom and the surface. Ever since those ancient times, they have been allowed to live in isolation, provided they don't interfere with the Zealians or the Earthbound. As for the rest of the Earthbound, salvation would come slowly to those trapped below the technological dominance of the superpower Zeal, but it would come. For those who had hidden away the frozen flame all these years, their faithful devotion would eventually pay off. Sometime around 300,000 BC, infusion of energy from the frozen flame, now called the Angel's Whisper, evolved the genome of the Earthbound and bestowed upon them the gift of magic. Over the next few generations, the scales of power began to balance. Armed with this new power, the Earthbound slaves initiated a war for their freedom. Once again, fighting enveloped the planet, a war that continues to rage until this day. For you see, the Enlightened Ones knew well what was happening with the frozen flame and the advent of magic, and as Balthazar mentioned, they launched a nefarious plot to cull the strongest magic users among the Earthbound in secret, a genetic bottleneck which would keep the Earthbound just hopeful enough to keep fighting, but without any true chance of ever toppling their slave masters. Once again, Luca's most celebrated pastime, learning stuff, has turned against her. After hearing the new history of the planet, Luca is spiritually drained. Is this what the world would become? A littered mess of tribal conflict and meaningless fighting? She remembers the words of Magus, "Gone is the kingdom of Zeal, and all the dreams and ambitions of its people." Robo says they should continue the investigation. There's still one place they may seek answers. Perhaps the people who have isolated themselves far from the war may offer a new perspective. So they head back to the surface and travel to the island between the North and South continents. There, they find what they are looking for. The massive black chain is infinitely creepy as it stretches into the unseen. Just as in Chrono Trigger, Luca and Robo ascend the megalithic chain to reach the cloudy terrain of Mount Woe. Except in this, the broken timeline, it is known by another name. The never-ending winds of the region have given the mysterious floating mountain, which lies halfway between the surface and the lands above, a new moniker, the Singing Mountain. In stark contrast to the worlds above and below, these demi-humans have a healthy society. Despite the environmental challenges of living on the Singing Mountain, they are thriving, and, as Robo suspected, mostly isolated from the war which consumes the rest of the world. Equipped with technological knowledge from Zeal, as well as some level of magical ability, they've utilized the best of both worlds to create a truly harmonious nation. Indeed, the demi-humans of the Singing Mountain are the most peaceful and productive people on the planet. This windswept place almost reminds Luca of the Kingdom of Zeal she once visited on the Keystone timeline, which does a lot to boost her mood. She travels the area meeting demi-humans and noting with increasing astonishment that there are no pyramidal records here. While exploring the corners of the Singing Mountain, Luca finds that, as strangely as the records do not exist on the Singing Mountain, the new do. Though she will one day learn how to communicate with them as Balthazar once did, this is a skill set she does not yet possess, and so the new are as cryptic and aloof as they have always been.